This is Sports 225. What a better way to kick off March Madness than with my old friend John Brady, the former basketball coach, LSU basketball radio analyst, and a guy with whom there's plenty to talk about this week. We've got the LSU season just finished. We've got the NCAA tournament underway, and we've got the former coach getting a job. Let's start with this, where I teased you when we first got on. I said, as a relatively new guy in the media, you never had to go a whole season with a team that struggled like LSU did. You probably ran out of ways to say stuff and be nice. You know what I mean? That's hard.
Well, I think what you do in that situation, Lee, is you find short-term things that we're doing well, and we talk about those, and that's what I tried to do. But the team, honestly, the team kept competing. There were just moments in some of these last 5 or 6 games where the opponent raises their level of play, and we weren't able to match that for whatever reason. Like we if the game was 30 minutes, we were pretty good. But the game's 40 minutes, and the last 10 or 12 minutes of every game, it seemed like we hit a spot where the other team would come at us, and we weren't able to lift our level of play. Now, I don't know the reasons for that, but maybe it's because we don't have good enough players to be able to do that, to make plays on their own. And there were moments in some of those games toward the end of the year, at least the last 6 or 7 or so, we missed shots that normal teams make. I mean, we just didn't make big shots at the right time. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting offseason, Lee, for LSU to see, are we back in the same situation next year? Do we have 8 or 9 new players again? And that's this transfer portal. That's what it'll do. You can run a whole team off, but now we could be back in the same situation. But if we are, hopefully we have a collection of better players that can make plays down the stretch.
Well, John, it's sobering to think, but it's been over 25 years since you took over at LSU. And your first team, of course, it really struggled. I want to say you went something like 2-14 in the SEC, but it was one of my favorite teams. And I'm not just saying this because of John, and John knows this, and we've talked about it before, because those guys, part of it was because they banded together against him, but they played so hard, and they never quit. They couldn't win, but you played a motion offense, 4 out, sometimes 5 out, and they played tough man-to-man defense, and they never mailed it in. And I made the comparison to this year's Matt McMahon team, that the same thing happened. They really played hard.
Well, for the most part, yes, they did. And, I go back to the story, and you've heard this, and I've said it before, what Joe Dean told me before my first year, my first game. In his own way, he says, John, your team's not any good. He says, I know it. The fans know it. He said, just do me a favor. I said, what's that, Mr. Dean? Look good losing. So, I mean, that at least we established, like you said, maybe the fans could identify how hard we were trying to play, what we were trying to do. And it was just a matter of time till we got players that were good enough to do that sort of thing, to beat the quality teams that are in the SEC.
Well, and it turns out, I mean, the SEC gets 8 teams in. And so, it wasn't like you played a cupcake schedule once. And LSU got off to that great start, and then, damn, they had to start conference.
Yeah, that's what baffles some people, is how we go 12-1, and then we get in the SEC and we win one game, then lose 14 in a row. And it is a little baffling, but, the bottom line is we just need to probably get 2 or 3 better players at some key positions in order to improve the win-loss column for sure.
Well, I felt like Matt McMahon did a good job, and I enjoyed his composure. I like the fact that his team didn't, they played the game the right way. There were never times we just looked at him and said, son, go take a seat. Besides the fact they couldn't put the ball in the ocean from the edge of the pier. But I don't hold that against a kid, like that. They played the game the right way. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and he I think you hit it on the head. He kept his composure. He didn't, lose his mentality on the sideline and get thrown out of games, and did that. He stayed the course, stayed on message, and it's just a matter of time till we get better players, and that's what has to happen. it's going to be interesting to see how they manage this roster. Who do we bring back? Who do we let go? Where are we going to get players that can put a team on the floor that's better than the team this year was?
Well, and then the other side of it too is you hope that the best players are the ones with the most promise stay, because the portal unfortunately works both ways, for somebody.
It does. It is a management headache in today's world. I don't. And I spoke at the Birmingham Tip-Off Club Monday, and I said, let's talk about senior night for a minute. They ought to do away with senior night, because if you have a lot of seniors, they're not very good. And we had one senior who was a 5th-year transfer, right? Then we had the walk-on from Mandeville, and then we had 3 managers. I mean, I don't think senior night's not going to be what it used to be when you've seen a guy there 4 years. He's left some of himself on the campus at LSU. Those kinds of things are lost in the transfer portal and the NIL stories.
Well, as many coaches who are contemporaries of John and me, and we're the same age, tell me, this isn't what we signed up for. It's a different world. He is John Brady. He has been the head basketball coach at, among other places, Samford, LSU, and Arkansas State. We'll get back to him in a second. I'm Lee Feinswag. It's Sports 225.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
All right, we're back on Sports 225, visiting with one of my favorite people and a great coach, John Brady, who was smart enough to get out after 3 college tenures and a bunch of success at other levels too. He's the LSU basketball analyst. John, a couple things about the SEC. We talk about 8 teams going in. I guess first, do you think Alabama's good enough to win the national championship? And is any other team in that group good enough to win the national championship?
I don't think any other team is good enough in the SEC to sustain 4 or 5 games in a row. But I've got Alabama. I picked Alabama to win the thing simply because of the way they've played in the SEC tournament. They just explosive. They're athletic. They've got depth. They play free. I make this joke. What does Eric Musselman, Bruce Pearl, and Nate Oates all have in common? They've never told their player, "Hey, that's a bad shot." Because they will shoot it anywhere at any time, and any one of them can shoot it. So I think Alabama's the best team in the country. I think it's going to take really a special team or either Alabama to shoot it poorly or somebody to really make some uncharacteristic plays to beat them.
Every Tuesday I go on Matt Moscona's radio show and talk about sports for a few minutes and then beer. But every year at March Madness, I pick Purdue to win the national championship. God, it's been like 8 years in a row. I don't even know if I think they're going to win most years. I just pick them because it's become this running joke. But this year, Purdue legitimately can win the national championship if Alabama played Purdue in the national championship. I don't think anybody'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think Purdue. I got Purdue losing maybe in the Elite 8 or in my bracket that I have filled out. I just don't know if their guards can hold up, or if they're athletic enough in the perimeter, as some of the teams they're going to face are. But I got Alabama playing Duke in the semis, and I got Texas and UCLA in the other semi. Duke. You look at that bracket. And particularly Marquette. I got Marquette going to the Elite 8 because their bracket is kind of an easy side, that lower half of that particular bracket. But I like Texas. I think Texas is playing really well. I think they feel good about one another. I think they're a happy team. I think they're a team that's executing at a high level, and I've got them going, to the Final Four.
Well, and the Texas story is the damnedest story, and it actually ties into the next subject I have for you. So, they lose their coach because of a domestic violence deal that he got fired, and yet continued, never missed a beat, which, is quite a credit to them. And now, our mutual good friend, but one of your dearest friends in life, Kermit Davis,
right,
got fired at Ole Miss, where Chris Baird, the Texas coach, has been hired to replace him. And, the whole cycle of things is crazy. But, how is Kermit doing? And is he smart enough to join you now on the golf course and get out of coaching?
Kermit's he bought a place down 38. He's got a big house down there about 300 yards off the beach, and he's down there right now with his family, his brother, his sister, and all of them. He's kind of detoxing for the next 2 weeks. I think he is. I think he would like to. He mentioned to me the other day he would like to do something like I'm doing, stay involved at some level. Do interviews like this and travel with a team if he could do something like that. He'd like to do maybe a little network stuff if they would allow him to from time to time. But I think he may be done with coaching. But he'd certainly like to stay involved during the winter months, and the spring and the summer he'll be in Destin. But the other times he wants something to do while the season's going on, and hopefully he can find it.
Kermit, of course, was John's assistant when they were at LSU. Jerry DiNardo, the former LSU football coach, is one of the many big-time coaches who has a place on 30A near Destin. That's like the coach's haven where all those guys hang out. So another Mississippi State guy, and all roads of Deep South college basketball lead through Mississippi State. John went there, and Kermit's dad, of course, was the coach there once. And Rick Stansbury stepped away from Western Kentucky.
Right.
Was former Mississippi State coach. Richard Williams still does radio for Mississippi State, right?
Yeah, he travels with
this big club. Stansbury, is he going to retire too, you think?
Yeah, I think Rick had some health issues, missed several games this year because of some health issues. I would assume that he's going to retire. He's probably a couple of years younger than I am, and you are. He's maybe 64 or 5, and I think this is it for him. He had a good run, though. He was a good coach, really tough to compete against, and an outstanding recruit.
It's an end of a Mississippi State era,
Well, hey. Time takes care of a lot of that. This era's got to end. They've got to end sometime. But it was fun. It was good.
Yeah, exactly. But you were smarter than all of them because you got out first. And I remember you telling me too, though, early on in your career at LSU, you said 11 years, that's the barometer. If you make it to 12, then you got to think about getting out. And wasn't it in your 12th year where that was it?
I don't know if it was 11 or 12, but it was right around that number. That was my vision for it. And, had I made it to 60 at LSU, I was going to retire for real. And I missed it by about 6 years, but it was good, man. Lee, honestly, not to be, reflective a little bit here, but coming back to LSU and doing what I'm doing and the way that people have received me, it's really been kind of a blessing, actually. And it's been fun, and I really appreciate it. I was never bitter or angry at anyone. You know that. You were at the press conference and all those things that I did at the end. And I'm always grateful for Joe Dean and his family for changing my life and giving me the opportunity to coach at LSU.
And I was the LSU basketball beat writer at the time, and I inherited one John Brady, and we had a good time. We got to take this break. When we get back, we'll talk with what I think is one of the most intriguing subjects of the basketball week. He's John Brady. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
Back on Sports 225, talking hoops because it's March Madness with John Brady, the former coach and now the LSU basketball analyst and erstwhile golfer who, as he visits with me, is down in Florida getting ready to waste a few hours on a golf course. John, I played twice. Yeah,
you did
twice?
twice?
Yeah. I played in 1977 and I shot in 87. First time I ever played.
Wow.
Yeah, but I didn't play the back nine. And that's true. And then I played again in 2002. Anyway, So LSU's coach Will Wade, who well, a little more than a year ago was released from his job, and with all sorts of things swirling about, was announced this week as the new McNeese State basketball coach, which I think is a good hire for McNeese for a lot of reasons. So they hire him on Monday, and then on Tuesday they suspend him for the first 5 games of next season. He hasn't even coached yet and done anything wrong. And I mean, to tell you, that's the damnedest thing I ever heard. Now, we both agree that Will Wade's a good basketball coach, right?
Yeah, Will Wade's an excellent coach and a very good recruiter. And I don't want any funny jokes about that, but he did put together a great collection of players, and he lets them play, and they like playing for him.
So, and we still don't know, because the sanctions are still forthcoming. He could be slapped with a show cause. It could be lighter than that. There's no telling what's going to be with Will Wade. But have you ever heard anything like this, where they suspended him ahead of time, like as a preemptive strike? I mean, I've said it 3 times already, but it's like, it's the damnedest thing ever.
Well, I think that the AD at McNeese is a good friend of Will's, and I think that played a part in it, obviously. I'm sure they had discussions about all of that and ran it up the flagpole to the president, the chancellor, whatever they call that guy there, and came up with this suspension or whatever it is, and put it out there maybe to hopefully buffer some of the NCAA decisions that they may or may not make. My biggest beef with the whole thing is, Lee, is why does it take you so long to make a ruling on something that happened 4 years ago? That's not fair to anyone. The players, the coach, any school that wants to hire Will, which he is marketable, did a great job at LSU. The best 4-year run of any coach that ever came here. Now, he took it over, and Johnny had left him some pretty good players, but and I took it over. There wasn't but 2 players there. It's kind of like what Matt McMahon inherited. So I think McNeese just wanted the name. They like him, and they vented all that out, hopefully in discussions. And I still don't know what the NCAA is going to do. I hear all kind of rumors. It's going to be bad. It's going to be nothing. It's going to be this or that. The question is going to linger out there. Had LSU stayed with him, what would have really happened at the end of the day? And was he worth that? So evidently, Kansas stays with Bill Self. You got it down the line. There's a couple of schools who did that. Arizona they terminated their coach. But you're going to never know that question. But it is something to talk about. Had LSU stayed with him, what would have happened? But, Will went back when they redid his contract, and Will agreed and signed to a clause in his contract that if he was accused of any violations, level 1 violations, they could terminate him with cause. Now, I don't know why somebody would ever sign that, but he did it, and that was what they fell on when they dismissed Will and from the head coaching position.
Well, I think part of that was it was a way for him to keep his job with that base salary, which was still pretty damn good for a young guy with a young kid, and be able to still coach until. And because if he hadn't agreed to that, then he would have not even had that for that extra year, or that he coached at LSU.
He probably was in favor of it stringing out for 4 more years so he can make some more money. That really helped him in that regard. And plus, he's 40 years old. He's young enough. He goes to McNeese in a couple of years and turns that thing around, gets through the sanctions that may or may not be placed against him. He'll be able to be in a position to get a bigger paying job and maybe bounce back into a Big 5 program, because he's proven he could do it at LSU.
No doubt. And the rules are different too from the things that he was accused of. I mean, last week I was with an NCAA athlete and said, no, we were having lunch, and I said, no, I got this. And I said, no, I couldn't have done this a year ago. It would have put you in jeopardy. But now it's nothing. It's all because of the NIL stuff.
Well, I still think that the coach can't personally pay a player out of his own account. It's got to go through the proper channels. But it is, as Nick Saban says, it is a pay for play situation we have in college athletics now.
Well, let me ask you this, because I hadn't thought this is a different question, but I want to finish this segment with, had you still been coaching and been at a place like LSU where there's an NIL, would you have hired a person to your staff to handle that? Or would you have made sure that's an important part of bringing people in and making sure that they're compensated now? Is that something you'd have to consider?
Absolutely. And I would have people come in and talk to the players that are getting money in the NIL situation and talk to them about finances, how to manage it, what to do, what are the positives and negatives of it, and how you need to conduct yourself and bring value to yourself by how you handle the situation. Because all of those guys at that level want to go to the NFL, the NBA, or whatever the case may be, and handle how they handle themselves while they're in college and bring value to themselves so they can go to the next level and create a positive environment for them. That's the challenge and players need to understand you get money now, which is good, but how do you handle that? How do you adjust to keep playing when you're getting paid? Because your whole idea is to go to the next level and make real money. So how much value are you bringing to yourself by how you conduct yourself in the situation you're in?
Interesting. All right, we got time for just a little bit here on Sports 225. He's John Brady. I'm Lee Feinsfager, and we'll be right back.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
All right, coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225, been hanging out with John Brady. Go to sports225.com for the show listings of when you're watching here on your view, which is Cox 4. John, you mentioned in the previous segment about how you and Matt McMahon inherited typical situations with similar situations with so few players. That story never gets old about how you had a meeting and you lost a player or two, and then you had another meeting and you lost another player, and Kermit Davis looked over at you and said, "John, maybe we better not have any more meetings."
Yeah. Well, I ask you, we had 7 coming back for that first team. We had a meeting or two and 3 left, so we had 4. And you got to have 5 to have a team. So once we got down to 4 players and we talked to that team and they ran out the door like they were going to win the SEC, they're all excited. I asked Kermit. I said, "Kermit, you have any suggestions?" He said, "Yeah, John, I got one." I said, "What's that?" "Let's don't have any more team meetings. We won't have no guys left."
With the LSU basketball team, and we talked about the portal, what's your primary need, you think, if you're Matt McMahon? What are you looking for right away?
We need guard play. We need a big that can protect the rim. I think that's one, and maybe score a little bit. But we need some guard play. Our turnovers that led to other team scores were not close to good enough. And we need somebody who can put the ball in the goal. We need guard play, shooters, handlers, good passers. And I think we'll be fine. But we need one, also a big around the basket that can protect the goal and score from time to time, but it doesn't have to be anything dominant.
All right, let's ask the most important sports question of the day before you go. How is your golf game?
It's not bad. It travels well. Got my handicap right,
There you go. He is John Brady, the former Samford, LSU, and Arkansas State basketball coach, is now the LSU basketball analyst on the radio broadcast, and he's living the good life as well he should. John, great to catch up. We don't visit nearly enough.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it, man. Always.
And thank you to everyone for watching Sports 225.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry. See the mowers marching, prizes fill the sky.